let us just jump right into this because I've got quite a few. We're going to be jumping into Jubilees and looking at some unique passages that explain the feast days to us. It's pretty amazing. So let me go and pull this up for us. All right, so the first one that we want to look at, actually, we're going to be looking at just a couple of verses here at the beginning of Jubilees chapter 1, because Jubilees chapter 1 starts off, the whole narrative starts off with Moses, who has ascended to Mount Sinai, and this is where the Father, through the angels, are actually going to communicate to him for 40 days and 40 nights. In this opening dialogue, the Father's literally telling Moses, generations from now, they're actually, after I take them into the land, they're going to rebel. And he's going to explain how they're going to rebel. And let's review those real quick. So it says here in Jubilees chapter 1, 6 through 10, and thus it will come to pass when all these things come upon them, they will recognize that I am more righteous than they are in all their judgments and in all their actions. And they will recognize that I've truly been with them. And I'm going to just stop and point that out real quick, guys. That's why I'm always helping us try to understand the word righteous in Scripture means behavior. It means right behavior. So that's why the Father can make a statement like that, because he's perfect, right? So he would say, I have better behavior than them in all their judgments and all their actions. And they will recognize that I've truly been with them. And it says, when all this comes to pass upon them, and he's about to go into some of the things they're going to rebel and do that's not going to be good. We also see some of the stuff mirrored also in Deuteronomy and Leviticus 26. So here it continues in verse 7. It says, and write for yourself all these words which I declare unto you this day, for I know their rebellion and their stiff neck, before I bring them into the land of which I swore to their fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, saying, unto your seed I will give a land flowing with milk and honey, and they will eat and be satisfied, and they will turn to strange gods, to gods which cannot deliver them from aught of their tribulations. And this witness shall be heard for a witness against them. For they will forget all my commandments, even all that I commanded them, and they will walk after the Gentiles, after their uncleanness, after their shame, and will serve other gods. And will serve their gods. And these will prove unto them an offense, and a tribulation, and an affliction, and a snare. And many will perish, and they will be taken captive, and they will fall into the hands of the enemy, because they have forsaken my ordinances and my commandments, the festivals of my covenant, and my Sabbaths, my holy place, which I have hallowed for myself in their midst, in my tabernacle, and my sanctuary, which I have hallowed for myself in the midst of the land, that I should set my name upon it, and that it should dwell there. And they will make to themselves high places and groves and graven images, and they will worship each in his own graven image, so as to go astray. And they will sacrifice their children to demons and to all the works of the errors of their hearts. And he goes on to say, finish through 11 through 16 by saying, and I will send witnesses against them, that I may witness against them. But they will not hear, and will slay the witnesses also, and they will persecute those who seek the law. And they will abrogate and change everything so as to work evil before my eyes. And I will hide my face from them, and I will deliver them in the hand of the Gentiles for captivity, and for a prey, and for devouring. And I will remove them from the midst of the land, and I will scatter them amongst the Gentiles, and they will forget all my law, and all my commandments, and all my judgments. And they'll go astray as to the new moons, and the Sabbaths, and the festivals, and the Jubilees, and the ordinances. And after this, they will return to me from among the Gentiles with all their heart, with all their soul, with all their strength. I will gather them from amongst all the Gentiles. That means nations, guys. The word Gentiles means nations. And they will seek me, so that I shall be found of them. When they seek me with all their heart and with all their soul, and I will disclose to them abounding peace with righteousness. And I will remove them, the plant of uprightness, with all my heart, with all my soul. And they shall they shall be for me a blessing and not a curse. And they shall be the head and not the tail. And I will build my sanctuary in their midst, and I will dwell with them. And I will be their God, and they shall be my people in truth and righteousness. Yeah, it's really beautiful. So this is kind of a huge summation over time, explaining how, even though this conversation's happened on the top of Mount Sinai, it's the Father basically just laying out from the days of Moses in a very short summary fashion all the way to the resurrection. That's how he's going to remove the plant of righteousness from the earth, and there will have abounding peace and righteousness. Remember that word righteousness means right behavior. This is what we're promised at the resurrection. This is how we can be at peace with the Father. So that's that summation he's talking about, all the way up to the resurrection. And that's the beauty, what we also see mirrored in Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 1 through 8. So with that said, let's jump into, as you saw, twice it's mentioned. He talks about how we've got issues there with, he says you got issues basically with them forgetting his ordinances, his statutes, his festivals, his new moons, his feet, all the jubilees and all the things that he's instructed in his instructions, the Torah. So let's look at where those came from, because as we've tried to explain here on Kingdom in Context, Moses is having this conversation on Mount Sinai, and it's not the first time they've heard this stuff. I promise you. This is a renewal of the covenant because, and we're going to go into the scriptures that go over this, this is happening on Shavuot. And Shavuot is a huge covenant festival and memorial observance. And we're going to go over all the scriptures that define that, explain that for us. Right off the bat, guys, Noah, he's keeping the Feast of First Fruits, the Feast of Weeks. It's the same festival. I know that Judaism teaches it's two different festivals, but that's not true. If you actually dig into Numbers and Leviticus and you compare it with Jubilee 6, it's the same day. So this is where Jubilee 6 just outright tells us, and Noah was the first one to keep it, or he was one of the first to keep it on the earth anyway. It's always been kept in heaven, as it explains. It goes on to say in Jubilee 6, 15 through 19, he gave to Noah and his sons a sign that there should not again be a flood on the earth. He set his bow in the cloud for a sign of the eternal covenant, that there should not again be a flood on the earth to destroy it all the days of the earth. For this reason, it is ordained and written on the heavenly tablets that they should celebrate the Feast of Weeks in this month, once a year, to renew the covenant every year. And this whole festival was celebrated in heaven from the day of creation till the days of Noah. 26 jubilees, 5 weeks of years, and Noah and his sons observed it for 7 jubilees and 1 week of years till the day of Noah's death. And from the day of Noah's death, his sons did away with it until the days of Abraham. And they ate blood. But Abraham observed it, and Isaac and Jacob and his children observed it up to your days, yours being Noah. Moses, remember guys, Moses is the guy being spoken to through this. And in your days, the children of Israel forgot it until you celebrated it anew on this mountain. And folks, that's what we're actually seeing in Exodus 24. It starts in Exodus 19. If you read in verse 1, it says in the beginning of the third month, they arrived at the base of Mount Sinai. And then you have several things that transpire over the next 15 days. Moses, with the elders in Exodus 24, 1 through 10, they go up and have the festival meal after they slaughtered the animals. That was them celebrating Shavuot. And then Moses goes on, and that right after that, he goes up to the mountain for the 40 days and the 40 nights. Apparently, there's like 2 levels of Mount Sinai. So the elders went with Moses and Aaron to one level. They had the Shavuot meal, and then Moses went up by himself to the top where he was going to get the tablets and get all this instruction for 40 days and 40 nights, which literally is where he's receiving the book of Jubilees. So in this conversation, the Father is explaining the patriarchs that came before Noah, that came before Moses, all the way back to Noah, and explaining Noah kept this festival you're celebrating here today on Mount Sinai, Moses. Noah kept this when he got off the boat. How interesting is that? How beautiful is that, right? He's connecting his ancestral lineage of the patriarchs before him that came and that were faithful to the Father because they had what's called righteousness. They had right behavior. This is why in Genesis 6:8, Noah's called righteous. He's doing the right behavior. And as you see in this passage here, it says that this festival is called First Fruits and Feast of Weeks. We also would call it, Shavuot or Pentecost. Depends on if you're using the Hebrew or the Greek transliterated. But its technical name is the Feast of Weeks and the Feast of First Fruits. Not only did Noah keep it, but it tells us right here in the text that the angels themselves kept it in heaven. And that's crazy, guys. It says this whole festival was celebrated in heaven from the day of the creation till the days of Noah. How beautiful is that? So this is a special one when you're celebrating this particular feast, it's not just you on the ground. It's all of heaven's keeping this as well. And they have been since creation started. Just in case you're confused and to think, but I thought they only received these instructions to keep these festivals when Moses got to Mount Sinai. No, been kept in heaven since the beginning. It's really beautiful. So if we keep going, we see that it goes on to explain a little bit more about this Feast of Weeks, how Noah observed it. And this is saying, and this is telling Moses, and do you command the children of Israel to observe this festival in all the generations for a commandment unto them. One day in the year, in this month, they shall celebrate the festival, for it is the Feast of Weeks and the Feast of First Fruits. This feast is twofold and of a double nature. According to what is written in engraving concerning it, celebrate it. For I've written, excuse me, guys. For I've written in the book of the first law, in that which I have written for you, that you should celebrate it in its season, one day in the year. And I explained to you its sacrifices, that the children of Israel should remember and should celebrate it throughout their generations in this month, one day in every year. Isn't that great? Yes, Mary W. That's right. They celebrate it in heaven too. God doesn't give us behavior that he doesn't keep. He keeps the same standard that he asks of us, right? Because he's not hypocritical. This is the beauty of that the Father and the angels are in heaven keeping the Torah, keeping the law of God, because it's considered right behavior. It's considered righteousness. It's pretty amazing. So we go on. Just in case you're wondering, okay, this directly tells us the Feast of First Fruits and the Feast of Weeks is the same festival. It's on the same day, one day out of the year, and it's in the middle of the third month. That's when this is. Now, this is important. I'm setting the stage for these next verses we're going to go into, okay? Because we're going to see the patriarchs celebrating this everywhere. And huge things happen on Shavuot, guys. Big moments that we see in Genesis happens on Shavuot. So if we go here into Jubilees chapter 14, we're going to see Abraham keeping this as well. And he said unto him, take me a heifer of 3 years, and a goat of 3 years, and a sheep of 3 years, and a turtle dove, and a pigeon. And Abraham took all these in the middle of the month, and he dwelt at the oak of Mamre, which is near Hebron. And he built there an altar and sacrificed all these. And he poured their blood upon the altar and divided them in the midst and laid them over against each other. But the birds divided he not. You guys remember this moment? This is Genesis 15. He says, and the birds came down upon the pieces, and Abraham drove them away and did not suffer the birds to touch them. And on that day, we made a covenant with Abram, according as he covenanted with Noah in this month. And Abram renewed the festival and the ordinance for himself forever. You guys, this is happening in the third month. I didn't have the ability to put it all on screen because of limited space, but this is also happening in the middle of the third month. So this is also this moment here in Genesis 15, this wonderful covenant moment, is happening on Shavuot, the same one that Noah covenanted with as well. And it's a festival and an ordinance forever. This is why it's spoken commonly in the book of Jubilees as a festival of renewal, because you need to renew this. You renew your observance of this festival, this one-day festival, every year in the middle of the third month. That's it's the festival of Feast of Weeks. It's beautiful. So this iconic moment in Genesis 15, where we see Abraham making this covenant meal with Yahweh, and this is happening on Shavuot, guys. It's amazing. So let's keep going. By the way, like I said, this is actually the same moment that's happening with Moses from Exodus 24 on. This is actually they're celebrating the Feast of Weeks. You guys remember when he's telling Pharaoh that Yahweh instructed them to let them go so they can go and worship him on the mountain. Well, this was the worship that they were trying to get to, so they could renew the covenant. This is very important, very, very important. So Jubilees chapter 1, verse 1 through 2. And it came to pass in the first year of the Exodus of the children of Israel out of Egypt, in the third month, on the 16th day of the month, that God spoke to Moses, saying, come up to me on the mount. I'll give you the 2 tablets of the stone of the law and of the commandment, which I've said, that you may teach them. Moses went up into the mountain of God, and the glory of God abode on the mountain, and the cloud overshadowed it 6 days. So this is after he had the meal. So this is, like I said, the middle of the month is when they have the Shavuot meal, and this is happening directly after that. So the reason why I included this is also to give you some context to Exodus 19 through 24 and how Jubilees keeps referencing back to that moment, because, like I keep saying, this is the storyline of Jubilees, is a conversation happening between angels speaking to Moses on the mountain, on the top of the Mount Sinai for 40 days. This is also referenced to Galatians 3:19 and Hebrews 2:2. So this is what is the law that was ordained through angels given unto Moses. So it's happening because they're observing Shavuot. And I want you to keep that in mind, guys. This is this particular festival, seemingly among any others, seems to be a big deal. And there's a lot of fun and unique things that are happening on this particular feast day. So check this out, guys. It keeps going. Jubilees 15, 1 through 5, and also verses 9 through 11. We have Abraham again. He's keeping the Feast of Weeks again. And in the 5th year, the 4th week of this Jubilee, in the 3rd month, in the middle of the month, Abraham celebrated the feast of the first fruits of the grain harvest. And he offered new offerings on the altar, the first fruits of the produce unto the Lord. and a heifer and a goat and a sheep on the altar as a burnt sacrifice unto the Lord. Their food offerings and their drink offerings he offered upon the altar with frankincense. And the Lord appeared to Abram and said unto him," did you guys catch that? I want you to, hopefully you're already reading the book of Jubilees, and hopefully as you read through it, after this presentation tonight, you're going to see, when you start seeing the dates that it gives you, it starts saying in this month on this day, or in this month on this beginning of this month, then suddenly you start saying, oh, an angel shows up. It's synonymous with these feast days, the visitations of the Father's angels to as he says in Hebrews 1:14, these are ministering servants sent out to those inheriting salvation. They're sent out to give us messages, to help us, to do all kinds of interaction with mankind. This is their purpose. And we're seeing huge significant moments when they do show up happening on feast days. And I think that's not worth glazing over. So it goes on to say, "And the Lord appeared to Abram and said unto him, I am God Almighty. Approve yourself before me and be you perfect." And guys, just as in case you've never seen me explain that and break that down, this is the same thing we see in Matthew 5:48. It's this idea of being perfect in the Hebrew and in the Greek. It doesn't mean that you can't make a mistake. It means that you're complete until the end. That's the usage of that word in the Greek and the Hebrew in the scriptures. It doesn't mean that you can't make a mistake. All these dudes made mistakes, and they were still called righteous because they were continually pressing on toward the goal, as Paul talks about in Philippians 3. They're striving towards righteousness. They're practicing the behavior, and that inherently means sometimes you fail. So it's okay. He's talking about be complete until the end. That's what he's considering perfect. He says, "I will make my covenant between me and you. I will multiply you exceedingly." And Abram fell on his face. And God talked with him and said, "And I shall establish my covenant between me and you and your seed after you throughout their generations for an eternal covenant, so that I may be a God unto you and to your seed after you. And I will give to you and your seed after you the land wherewith you are a sojourner. You've been a sojourner, the land of Canaan, that you may possess it forever. And I will be their God." And the Lord said unto Abraham, "And as for you, do you keep my covenant, and you and your seed after you, and circumcise every male among you, and circumcise your foreskins, and it shall be a token of an eternal covenant between me and you." Now, as you can see, I put these verses together. Go back and read the whole chapter if you want a full-on breakdown. It's just like you read in Genesis 18. He circumcises his whole household in that day. This is the moment of the father shows up again to Abraham, tells him about circumcision. Everybody gets circumcised. It's a token. It's a sign of the covenant. And it's being done on Shavuot, guys. How crazy is that? Jubilees 16:13 through 14. "And she bare," that's Sarah, "she bare a son in the 3rd month, in the middle of the month, at the time of which the Lord had spoken to Abraham on the festival of the first fruits of the harvest, Isaac was born. And Abraham circumcised his son on the 8th day. He was the first that was circumcised according to the covenant, which is ordained forever." Guys, think about this. Isaac is born on Shavuot. How beautiful is that? Isaac is born that day, the middle of the 3rd month. Same chapter. It goes on to explain. So let's keep going, guys. Isaac is also celebrating the Feast of Weeks and First Fruits. Here in Jubilees 22:1-4. "And it came to pass in the 1st week in the 40th Jubilee, in the 2nd year, that is, the year in which Abraham died, that Isaac and Ishmael came from the well of the oath to celebrate the Feast of Weeks." So even Ishmael's keeping it with him, right? Because he was taught by Abraham what to do. "That is the Feast of the First Fruits of the harvest." So it's telling you again, guys, the Feast of Weeks, the Feast of First Fruits is the same festival, the same day. It says, "To Abraham, their father," excuse me, "and their," let me see if I can, okay. So this is Isaac, okay? He and Ishmael both are going to visit Abraham to celebrate Shavuot. It's beautiful. So he says right here, that Isaac and Ishmael came from the well of the oath to celebrate the Feast of Weeks, that is the Feast of the First Fruits of the harvest, to Abraham, their father. And Abraham rejoiced because his 2 sons had come. For Isaac had many possessions in Beersheba, and Isaac was wont to go and see his possessions and to return to his father. And in those days, Ishmael came to see his father, and they both came together. And Isaac offered a sacrifice for a burnt offering. He offered a thank offering and made a feast of joy before Ishmael, his brother. Rebekah made new cakes from the new grain and gave them to Jacob, her son, to take them to Abraham, his father, from the first fruits of the land, that he might eat and bless the Creator of all things before he died. And if you read the rest of this chapter, all into chapter 23, guys, Abraham dies. Guys, Abraham dies on Shavuot. It's a huge day. This is a huge day. Let's keep going. Jacob is celebrating the Feast of First Fruits, guys. This is in Jubilees 44, 2 through 8. So it says, and Jacob remembered the dream that he had seen at Bethel, and he feared to go down into Egypt. And while he was thinking of sending word to Joseph to come to him, that he would not go down, he remained there 7 days, if perchance he could see a vision as to whether he should remain or go down. And he celebrated the harvest festival of the firstfruits with old grain. For in all the land of Canaan there was not a handful of seed in the land, for the famine was over all the beasts and the cattle and the birds, and also over man. And on the 16th the Lord appeared unto him and said unto him, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here am I. And he said to him, I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham and Isaac. Fear not to go down into Egypt, for I will make of you a great nation, and I will go down with you, and I will bring you up again, and in this land you shall not be buried. And Joseph shall put his hands upon your eyes. Fear not, go down into Egypt. And his sons rose up, and his sons' sons, and they placed their father and their possessions upon wagons. And Israel rose from the well of the oath on the 16th of this third month, and went to the land of Egypt. Guys, right here around Shavuot is when they have a visitation from the Lord, from an angel comes with a message to answer his prayer. He literally says at the beginning of this, I'm going to remain here 7 days, and to see if I can have it, perchance I could have a vision to get an answer to this prayer. And but even though they're in a land full of famine, and he can't celebrate first fruits properly because he doesn't have any first fruits. Remember, this was the famine that's happening, and Joseph's already in Egypt, and he, has prepared for all this extra food for all these nations around them, so they can withstand the famine. So this is why Jacob and the others are about to come down with him. But they stay 7 days to celebrate the Feast of Weeks and First Fruits with old grain. Guys, they're not even doing the festival right, and the Father is still honoring them by answering his prayer and showing up with an angel. That's how much he cares about us trying. Even if we can't do it perfectly, he wants us to try with all of our heart and with all the direction that he's given us, literally. Right? Our heart and our mind. We got to put it together. So this is a wonderful example. I like to remind people that Jacob isn't doing this to the letter, but he has the spirit of the law he's practicing. He's doing the best he can with fervency in faith, even though he can't keep it to the letter because he doesn't even have first fruits to offer. The Father still honors him in this moment. It's beautiful, guys. It's so beautiful.